Guardians of the Galaxy is a beloved series. That is not a hot take. On top of that, it is positioning itself to be the first real trilogy that Marvel has made. I think an argument could be made for Iron Man, but we are not doing that here. Definitely not Captain America though. But it's easy to forget that before it came out and was the third highest grossing film of 2014, it was a bit of a gamble. James Gunn was an indie director who came up writing schlock films and PG porn, not the hit maker he's seen as now. On top of that, Guardians was not one of the major Marvel brands. The cinematic universe may have been built on their, at the time, B-list heroes, but Guardians, while beloved by its fans, did not have the same reach. Now, I don't want to be disingenuous here. It's not like people were expecting this movie to fail. It is a film in the biggest cinematic franchise of all time, after all. I'm just saying, public perception was not that it would be as big as it ended up being, and anybody who says otherwise is lying. But now, as we reach the end of the line for the series, at least the version with these characters led by Gunn, I want to take a step back and re-examine the first film now and see if it's all we remember it to be. Let's do this. So when I started doing these Does It Hold Up videos, an idea that is totally unique to me and no one else has ever done, I never wanted to do something this recent. That wasn't in the plans. I wanted to look at films from the 90s and 2000s in particular, the films that were watched by my generation when we were growing up, and evaluating them without the lens of nostalgia as much as possible, and dig into their defining elements with a modern lens. But I think Guardians is worth this kind of discussion. The MCU has had a rapid growth and evolution, and I think that it is worth this kind of discussion. And it's definitely not because I think that talking about Guardians would be a good thing to do right now algorithmically. Not at all. So, with that out of the way, what are the elements we are going to evaluate Guardians of the Galaxy on? I want to discuss the film's characters, tone, action sequences, and of course, the music. Let's start there. Does Guardians' music work beyond the gimmick? Yes. Of course, yes. The fact that it does goes beyond the truth that Blue Suede wrote a bop in the 60s with Hooked on a Feeling. The soundtrack fleshes everything out. The songs tell a story.
Impound that tape, and that player is mine!
Compare this to the 2016 Suicide Squad film. Admittedly low-hanging fruit, but it does highlight what Guardians does so well. The needle drops in Squad are, at the very least, uninspired. Not only are there way too many front-loaded into that film, but they are on the nose and overly popular choices. And while nothing Gunn picked for Guardians is an unknown secret song that no one's heard of, it was not the kind of stuff that the younger audiences were familiar with. But more importantly, they were baked into the script. Scenes were written and shot to have these songs played alongside them, and that's why they feel so complete. Finally, it barely needs to be stated, but the entire thing ties narratively into Peter Quill. The songs were a gift from his mother, and without them, his character has no resolution to his arc. The songs tell the story. I was going to make story one of the points when I was outlining this video, but on that rewatch to take notes, it just felt pointless. It felt that way because the highs and lows of the plot are tied directly to the characters. These characters are the real point of the film. The villain's plot doesn't feel like it has very much weight to it because neither Ronan nor the people of Xandar are overly fleshed out. On the other hand, things like Groot's death works because of how invested we are to the Guardians. They are very well done. Let's talk about negatives first. The Xandarians and their people don't have any real personality. Something like that is fine for bit players, they all do great, and in no way do I expect Shakespearean backstories for them. But our only real anchor point to the planet is the Nova Corps, and with them, the most we get is the casting. John C. Reilly's character works because John C. Reilly is playing him, lending his natural John C. Reilly-like ability. The same argument can be made for Ronan. On paper, there isn't much to him, he's one note, but Lee Pace brings the right energy needed to play that note perfectly. And I get why they did this. The movie has 5 lead characters, plus Yondu and Nebula, who, I will admit, don't really get much depth added to their characters till the sequel, but they're still there, taking up some of that time with their setup. But still, that is 5 characters that they need to set up and give motivations and personality to, and they do an excellent job with it. Marvel, especially post-Avengers, has really become the quip factory. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think there's a cast that does it better than this one. While many MCU movies could pass its dialogue from one character to another with little to no changes needed, that's not the case here. These jokes, these punchlines define the characters. I've said this about movies before, and I'll likely say it again because I think this point is evergreen. Being able to write comedy like this is the best. Every other movie that doesn't write their jokes like this is worse for it. Tone can be a weird thing to talk on. Like, you can defend a jarring shift as a creative choice for emphasis, you know? That said, this movie manages to balance the comedy with the more heartfelt aspects especially well. They never undercut the real emotion for cheap laughs. I think the second film does this to a certain extent, but that's besides the point. Look at the scene with Rocket and Drax after the climax. They could have dropped some banter or give Drax a one-liner to break the tension, and a lot of big budget movies would, but instead, they break our hearts without a single word spoken. This is a popcorn flick, and those live or die on their action. Now, you can say a lot that this PG-13 movie's action is lacking, and yes, if you compare the film to John Wick or the Raid movies, Guardians crashes and burns. That said, this is still a lot of fun, and a part of that comes from the fact that we get a variety of different fight sequences, from hand-to-hand, to shootouts, to space battles, to dance-offs. These sequences do the best they can under the House of Mouse, and I appreciate it. They are a lot of fun for what they are. If you can't tell by now, my answer is yes, I do think this film holds up. While it has its flaws, it's still a lot of fun, delivers a lot of heart, and in my opinion, is one of the high watermarks of what Marvel has done in their cinematic universe. The way it manages to tie to the greater overarching plot of the universe, while still standing on its own and not feeling like a piece of the puzzle, is something that I feel lacks now, and I appreciate the hell out of it. Honestly, I think the franchise as a whole has a lot it could learn from its 2014 release. So that's it for this video. Please leave a like, subscribe if you aren't, and let me know what other nostalgic films I can examine like this. Hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, have a good one.